A month ago yesterday, I did a video on Trump's $10 billion lawsuit against the BBC, claiming that they had defamed him and that they had damaged his business interest. Then I said he had made a huge mistake, a huge legal mistake. And here's what I said. All right, so Donald Trump's latest legal stunt, it's about to backfire so badly that even his lawyers are probably looking at the complaint and whispering to themselves, who let him file this? Because in a minute, I'll show you why this BBC lawsuit could turn into one of the biggest self inflicted legal disasters of his life. And let's hope that's true. Yeah, let's do hope that's true, actually. I went on to explain why I thought it would be a legal disaster for him. And my point in the end was that I thought he might withdraw the lawsuit because he would be ordered to hand over all his financial information, and he wouldn't want to do that. But he has now done the next closest thing to closing down the lawsuit. I'm Jonathan Burton, and I predicted he would withdraw the lawsuit because it was going to force him to reveal all of his secret financial information. Because when you sue someone and make a claim against them, you have to prove your claim. You have to prove that they did what you're suing them for, that they did what you say they did. So if part of your claim is that they deprived you of income, then you have to prove it. You can't just claim it. You have to show what your income was before they committed the terrible act. And then you have to show how much lower it was after they committed the terrible act. So Trump's huge blunder in this lawsuit was claiming that not only had the BBC defamed him, but that it had also hurt his businesses. And in putting in the claim about his businesses being hurt, he opened himself up to all kinds of discovery because that would give the BBC a legitimate right to come in and demand that he hand over all of his financial records for his businesses. Now, that's on the business side of the lawsuit. On the defamation side, there's another interesting question because how could he prove he was defamed? First of all, how can you defame a person like that who 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 has the reputation of someone like that? How can you defame them? I mean, he's at the bottom of the barrel already. How low can he go? Have you seen his poll ratings lately? I mean, seriously, check his ratings out. When he first came into office a year and a half ago, he had approval ratings at around 50% for several weeks. And that was months after the BBC story aired. So, in the first months he was in office, which are the months closest to the airing of the BBC story, his poll ratings were at their highest. They were this highest. Some stupid bug in here. Anyway, get out of here. Out, 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 out. Sorry about that. Anyway, at the first of his administration in January of 2025, it was just a few months after the BBC story came out, so that was the closest point in time to the BBC story from then until now. And his poll ratings then were their highest, and now they're lowest. So at the beginning, he was at you know hanging around 50% approval rating. But as he's gotten farther and farther away from the airing of that story, his approval ratings have plummeted. He slipped from near 50% then to 30% now. He's in the 30s now. And now we're the farthest away from the BBC story airing. So the BBC story obviously had nothing to do with that at all. It's everything he's done in office. I will not start to name it because if I do, we'll be here all night. Anyway, but that was that his poll drop obviously had nothing to do with the BBC story. They haven't been re-airing it. It has not gone into reruns since he became president. And now we are a year and a half out, at least, we're almost 2 years away now from when the story first aired before November 2024. Okay. So it aired before the election of 2024. And now in 2026, and we're getting near the end of the year, which was when it ran, his poll ratings are continuing to plummet with no story in sight, no BBC story in sight. So, how could he possibly blame that on the BBC story? In other words, There is as little evidence that that story harmed his reputation as there is that it harmed his businesses. There's no evidence on either count. But on the income side, he's claiming in this lawsuit that his businesses were hurt by the BBC reporting. And to prove that, he would have to show that he was doing really well before the story aired, and then business plummeted after it aired. And how does a business owner show that type of thing? They show it by releasing their financial records. So that gave the BBC the right to come in and demand that the records be released. And the judge agreed, and he ordered Trump to turn over the records. That's not political persecution, though. Trump's now claiming that's political persecution. But it's not. That's the logical and reasonable path a lawsuit like this takes. Okay. All lawsuits go this way. They all go this way. The person suing claims something, claims damages. He has to prove the damages. So for him to come out and continuously claim political persecution and all of this, just absolutely ridiculous. And for all you MAGA heads who believe it and swallow it hook, line, and sinker, like, get a life. Can't you see? I mean, all of you, almost all of you, are over 65. You've been around long enough to know, don't be a sucker. Anyway, knowing that is what would probably happen, knowing that if he did this lawsuit, that the judge would order discovery and he would have to release all these financial records. A lot of us knew that he would not want to release that information, and we postulated that he might withdraw from the case in order to avoid having to do so. And the reason we believe he wouldn't want to release the information is because it's not hard to imagine that he's probably guilty of all kinds of financial crimes. And releasing the information would expose him to all kinds of legal and criminal liability. But it turns out he has one more trick up his sleeve, up his legal sleeve, before resorting to dropping the whole suit. So instead of dropping the whole suit right now, he's taken another tactic to get out of, having to release all his financial information. But it still adds fuel to the fire of our belief that there's massive evidence of serious financial crimes in these files. Check out this article from The Guardian, out yesterday. Well, August 5th. I should, everybody who does YouTube videos should never say today and yesterday in relative times. They should just give the date. So I'm recording this on August 6th, and this was released on August 5th, so the day before. Trump team pushes to block court order giving the BBC access to financial records. This is exactly what a lot of us saw happening, that he would do anything and everything to avoid having to release these records, okay? And my prediction is, if the judge won't let him get away with this, that he will drop the case, because there's no way. There's no way he's going to release these records. Donald Trump's legal team is making an 11th hour attempt to block a court order that would grant the BBC access to the president's financial records as part of his multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against the British broadcaster. Trump claims that the BBC's 2024 documentary on the January 6th attacks have damaged the president's business interest. Nobody would believe this. Even a jury hearing no evidence would instantly know it can't be true. In July last month, a Miami-based judge ruled that the president would have to start handing over detailed financial records to the BBC by August 6th, today, the day I'm recording this. So far, nothing. So he waits until the day before, the last minute, the very day before, to say, oh, can we please get out of that? Can you give us an extension? The records would reveal details into the hundreds of businesses owned by the U.S. president's family trust. Hundreds of businesses. Can you imagine? Oh, so many opportunities for legal, what I'll call legal complications, what other people would call crimes. Trump's attorneys asked the court on Wednesday to temporarily pause the enforcement of the court order, arguing that the BBC had demanded a shockingly broad amount of information based on clearly political motives. Oh, God, these guys, man, seriously. always blaming it on political motivations. And in the very next paragraph, you're going to see his lawyers know that it's not that, because look what this says. Trump's lawyers also asked the court to amend their initial lawsuit to instead focus on reputation harm that was caused by the documentary, which would keep necessary disclosures proportional to the needs of the case, the lawyer said. So look at that. Instead of focusing on financial harm, let's focus on defamation, on reputational harm, because we know if we focus on financial harm, a court would ask for all of our financial documents. So instead of focusing on that harm, let's go down to reputation harm and focus on that. So you will no longer ask for our financial documents, because we know you're not asking out of political motivations. We know you're asking because we're suing for financial harm. So we would have to produce those documents to prove we were harmed financially. You see, they know. They know that what they just said here is a lie. While it is unclear what Trump's net worth is, recent financial disclosures showed that he made more than $2.2 billion during his first year back in office. So, how was he hurt financially? By the BBC's story? He's made more than $2 billion. He's $2 billion richer in his first year back in office after the BBC story aired than he was before he took office. So, I mean, this guy is unbelievable. But what's more unbelievable is there's so many people who believe him. That's the really unbelievable part. And they're old enough to know better, most of them. I mean, I think this is going to be his last shot, though, with this $10 billion lawsuit. If the judge denies this motion, I think Trump will withdraw the case, because I believe he's committed massive financial crimes. I do. That's my opinion. And that there's a ton of evidence for that in these files. And I think that's why he's going to hide them. And by the way, think how serious those crimes might be if it turns out he does give up the lawsuit over this issue. I mean, we're talking about giving up the possibility of winning a $10 billion lawsuit. Think what must be in those files that he would rather give that up, rather give up the $10 billion, or even a fraction of $10 billion. 10% of that's $1 billion. So, he could settle. He could settle. But he's willing to give that up. He hasn't done it yet, but if he does withdraw from the lawsuit, to me, that would show that he was willing to give up the chance at even $1 billion rather than to release those records to the court. So that will tell us something. Let's watch this case and keep our eyes on it and see what happens. All right. If he withdraws the suit eventually or doesn't release the financial records, it's because I think there are crimes in there, and that's evidence for it. I'll tell you one other thing. He is as determined to prevent the release of these financial files as he is to prevent the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. But I think he may be even more determined to prevent the release of these files. Either way, he ain't going to release either set. No set. Epstein's not coming out, and these financial files aren't coming out. All right. All right. That's it for me. I'm Jonathan Burton. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you soon. Take care.